So I live in California, and you'd have to be living under a rock if you hadn't heard about our wildfires and all the smoke that they're producing, and how far that smoke is spreading. And because of all this, a couple of years ago I purchased one of these air quality sensors from Cytron. And while it does a good job, it only produces data in the raw 2.5 format. But really the number that everyone uses is what's called the AQI, the Air Quality Index number. And this is the table that people have gotten familiar with here in California. It's what gets discussed on news broadcasts and what Purple Air uses, the website we now use for being able to get the AQI value in our neighborhood. So what I decided to do was just connect an Arduino up to the Honeywell air sensor and produce that AQI value directly. So here I'm just going to provide the basics of how I wired this thing up, and the code is posted on GitHub, and I'll provide a link to that and other useful links in the description. So I went Googling around for something Arduino with a built-in display and found this little unit on Amazon. The beauty of this is that besides having the built-in display, it has a little header here on top, and I only need to take 3 wires over to the sensor. So here you can see the 3 wires. The leftmost one is the ground, and then the center one is 5 volts, and then the one on the right is the Arduino's receiver. It's of course the sensor's transmitter. So the sensor's pinout is available in its datasheet, and I'll provide a link to that. But here you can see those 3 signals, the ground and the 5 volts and also the transmit. And here's sort of a pictograph of how those wires would go together. So on the sensor side, I didn't have a spare one of these cables, and I didn't want to destroy the one that I have, so I thought I'd just splice into it. So here's what it looks like after I took an X-Acto to the insulation, and then I just put a little bit of solder onto the wire to tin it. And then that makes it easy to bring along the other wire that's already been tinned and just join the 2 together. So this is what it looks like when it was done. And yeah, I know it's ugly, but this is serial communication, so it's really not that fast. Note here that I originally did 4 wires because originally I was going to have the Arduino send data to the sensor instead of just receive data from the sensor. And this is possible because the sensor every second streams the data out automatically. So you don't actually have to send it any commands to do that. So that it just simplifies things. The other benefit of this is the Arduino wants to send data at 5 volts, and the sensor can only tolerate 3.3, so I'd have to use a level shifter of some type. But you might be asking yourself, well then how can the sensor communicate with the Arduino since they operate at 2 different voltages? And the reason is that the sensor will send out data at 3.3 volts, and that's sufficient to cross the threshold that the Arduino can understand as a logic 1. After I got the code debugged, I just mounted it on this little piece of acrylic that I just sort of bent so that it would fit. As you can see, it can be powered just via the USB connection on the Arduino. As I mentioned, I provided a link to the GitHub repository where the code exists, and I hope someone finds this useful. I use it to measure the air quality inside my house, actually. So if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments.